As a child, do you remember when all the adults used to talk about the weather and you were like, what's that about? And as you were growing up, you'd recognize that the adults would repeat stories, they'd repeat jokes, they'd have this like social currency that they'd cash in with different people. And it felt a bit strange, felt a bit inauthentic because then it's just being produced. It's like a book or like a video or something like that. And I suppose maybe that's why we share books and videos now and memes and stuff like that, because then it's no longer coming out of us and pretending as if it's like spur of the moment, here's a joke, ha ha ha. And we're just kind of leaning into the fact that this was produced before us, we picked it up off someone else, and we're just offering it here for the moment because it seems appropriate, it seems funny, whatever the reason. So, all to say, small talk is kind of on the out. It's an old tradition. It's not enjoyed as much as it used to be. Maybe that's the best way of saying it. I want to reclaim it a small bit. Or at least I want to say that on either side of this spectrum, you can go too far. And I want to use Plato to kind of articulate this point. I want to use Plato's cave, the allegory of the cave, and going off into the land of the forms to articulate this point. So if you can give me 2 minutes, I'm going to go through a brief description of that allegory. So, in the cave, Plato's cave, you are looking at the world of shadows. And this is, and I don't mean like us looking at puppetry and stuff like that. I mean, you're in that world. That takes up your whole scope. You don't see anything outside of it. You are in that world of shadows, where there's shadows being cast against the wall, and that makes up your world. Some part of you feels strange about this. Eventually, as you get older, as you mature, and you're just like, this doesn't seem right. Something, so maybe you look in the way, and then once you do that, you might realize that there's a room around you, and that, you know, the shadows aren't necessarily 100% correct. And you realize that there's people in the background and they are casting these shadows. There are people there and they are casting these big shadows that are taking up your world, that are taking up your energy, your attention. Now, this can be, don't make this purely a power struggle thing. This isn't just for the like 1% trying to mind wash us through social media or like whatever. This is also heritage and culture and influence and just friends. It's just people, different people who have an influence on the person you're creating in yourself, or an influence on how you're spending your attention or your energy or any of that sort of stuff. It's just influence is what's being referred to here. And they're casting shadows up onto this big wall, and that was what was capturing all of your attention. Now you're after realizing that there's a room, you're after looking back and just being like, geez, I'm kind of co-made with all of these people. Like they've created me like more than I'd care to imagine. Geez, that's kind of iffy. And then you see the fire behind them and you're wondering like where that energy is coming from. We're burning all of these flammable fossils and just, yeah, we're just doing that just for the fun of this game that's happening on the shadow. Like as in, that's a whole ecology, or that's a whole environmental sort of argument there. But there's a fire there and they're burning off parts of the world to produce this scene here that was capturing your attention. But now you're in the cave and you're after realizing all of this, so you start climbing out of the cave. And as you're climbing out, sunlight's coming in. That's a new type of light. It starts blinding you. You're just kind of, oh, that's hard. So you keep having to stop and letting your eyes readjust and then going a bit further and squinting, and you find it tough. This is the journey out of the cave. And then you get out of the cave into the land of forms. I'm condensing this down so much. In the land of forms, you see the forms or the spirits, and the sun is there, but you cannot look directly at the sun. A quick explanation on what these forms or spirits are. He calls them forms. I'm using the word spirit because I want you to think of something that's non-tangible, that's not actually the shape you think it is. So if you think of the form of a chair, I find this one kind of easy, where what is it that makes a chair instead of a stool? Like I don't know, but I know when I see them. I'd call one, I call the other. Those spirits are very closely related, but they're not identical. And what do I mean by just the form or the spirit of the chair? I mean that across all iterations, like, a short chair, a long chair, a high chair, ones with cushions, ones that are hard, ones with like a decorated back, ones with a curved back, all of these are iterations. They're all versions, kind of the chair, the perfect chair, or the form, or the essence, or the spirit of the chair. I'm using the words in that tone, or kind of in that understanding. So hopefully that's not rubbing up against your kind of cynical, like, non-religious sort of beliefs. I'm not using it in that sense. I'm using it in like the through line sense. But just the through line isn't a word that everyone's familiar with yet. So I'm trying to find words here that everyone grasps. But so that's what you see. The important thing to know here, and this is where it gets spiritual, and this is where I'm going to bring back into conversation, is in this land, you have the sun that you cannot look directly at. The sun is the universal pattern. The sun is the good, like capital G, good, or God, or whatever way you want to phrase it. It's source. And it's shining down. And it's fragmenting like a rainbow into all of these different forms, all of these different spirits, because they're all the kind of perfect essence of what each of them would be or should be. And when we get inspired, we're tapping into that. And then each of those forms and spirits, as they hit reality, they fragment again like a rainbow into their iterations, into their different forms that we do see. So you have that 3 levels, okay? Our level, material, the level of the forms, and then you have the good, the like, perfect, the higher, something like that. And just to finish off the allegory of the cave, the person, you, me, we go back down into the cave. We try to wake everyone back up, but now we're in the dark cave. Our eyes have adjusted. We can't see anymore. So we're fumbling around. We look like an idiot. We have our own, like, they think we're mad for the way we speak and all the rest. And it's just like, what are you at? You can't even sit down. You can't even walk around the room. You can't, like, what are you doing? You look like an idiot. Which actually, ironically, the weekend just gone is the Christian celebration for when the tongues of fire land on the apostles' head. I don't know if you remember that story, but basically the Holy Spirit is meant to come into the room and tongues of fire land on everyone, and they all start speaking their native tongue. That's the language that's used, their native tongue. It also says that they can translate and like spread the word across the world through Greek and Roman, all these different languages, but the phrase that's used is their native tongue. There's Platonism there. They are speaking their language. They've connected to something, the good or something like that. And now they are speaking those words that are authentically coming out, connected to that, not controlled or kind of parametered by the shadows and the people casting shadows. Sidetrack. Apologies for that one. But I'm finding, but it made my head turn a wee bit. All to say, how, like, Jesus, Nathan, you've gone on how long now about all of this, and you've promised me like some sort of information about a conversation, how to be a better conversationalist, how to redeem small talk. Like, maybe, like, I can kind of see it. Maybe there's like, there's a bit of form in the small talk or something, but like, geez, you're stretching that one. Like, that's not giving me an insight. That's not giving me this kind of gotcha moment, just no. I get it. What I would say is that not in small talk, but the attention behind the details is what's important. So some people are good at doing this through small talk, and they can bring small talk into big talk and deep talk. They can do all of that. It's like there's an art form to it. And maybe to start off, you need like an on-ramp to get to the deeper topics and to get to the bigger, kind of juicier subjects that you can talk about. But the emphasis to get there isn't an emphasis on the words. If you are repeating the story, are you getting better at telling the story? If you're telling the story, are different parts of the story grabbing you this time? So, I can think of stories here. My head immediately goes to the prodigal son, again from the Bible. Don't know why today, but in the fact that you have the father who is overjoyed for the son coming back. You have the son who is kind of some bit abashed and kind of like, I'm sorry for running away and all the rest. And then you have the son who stayed, who is a little bit resentful for like, you fecked off and now you're coming back and it's all just normal. When you read that story, you're going to take on each of those characters at different times, depending on what's going on in your life. So maybe the same story can actually have a little bit of form to it. There's something more to it. There's a mystery in the actual story itself. Even though the details don't change, it just hits you a little different. And if you go back and watch your childhood movies, or you go back and you watch any of your stuff, you'll feel that. You'll be just like, I kind of feel, I don't know, for me it's Lion King, so for me it's like Mufasa, or it's Rafiki, or obviously Simba, but as in like, sometimes those characters resonate with me differently. All to say, to bring this back to an actual conversation and to actual reality, and not just this kind of solely interperson or intrapersonal sort of stuff. On this like interpersonal sort of level, what's going on? How do I use this idea of the forms, of the perfect, the forms, and then the material? How does that lead into a conversation? Essentially, you're looking for beauty. You're looking for something that strikes you as beautiful in the conversation. The way they are phrasing it, the way their eloquence, the way their register is flowing as they talk, like that's something that's interesting. The way that their eyes light up at different parts, okay, that's capturing something that's connected to the perfect. So is that the form? Like, what form is that? What, like, where does that come from? Why? Because when we're talking about the forms, I don't just mean like, physical kind of like objects. I kind of mean the virtues as well. I kind of mean all of these like humanity, or all of these personality traits, all of these energies that move us, essentially. So if you aim it there, because like, of course I was going to come back to the virtues. I apologize, but like, of course. But what is it that made them light up there? What is it that made them just, like, I felt their energy. It was kind of down. They were listening a little bit too much, and then they got talking, and then there was momentum built up. Like, where did that source from? What was that? And all they were doing was talking about the weather. Why was that so fascinating to them? It's like, are you planning a holiday? Are you going somewhere? Like, are you just enjoying the day? What makes you enjoy the day so much? What have you seen today that made you really enjoy it? Like, what is this thing that's striking you as giving you vitality in this moment? Is it just that you have something to say and now you're kind of like spieling it out? Oh, now, so that's bringing us back to small talk that we don't like. And that's totally fair. This is not to pretend as if that's nothing. But it is also to say that if you veer all the way to the other end and you only have deep talk, and you only have, like, the true conversations about something logical and something that happened and all the rest, and of course I'm projecting here, but if you're only having those conversations that are 100% authentic, never repeat themselves, never are to be repeated, well, again, you're missing levels. You're missing some sort of nuance. You're missing that quality of a story worth retelling. You're missing that quality of a memory, because memories are going to be recycled, so they're automatically off the table. You're automatically forced into that future projection sort of level, which can be fun, but you can only talk about it once, so you can't repeat it. And do you have to keep changing your mind then? Do you have to keep kind of shifting and all the rest? It's like, my strategy today is I would suggest that our true essence, our true selves, and the true selves of the other people that we are talking to is fairly nuanced and fairly complicated. So having an understanding of these three levels, I have found to be very rich, to be very eye-opening, to be like, it opens doors where I didn't realize there was doors beforehand, because you're just like, what happened there? It gives you a certain amount of detachment. This is going to be a practice skill. I would suggest when you go around on a walk and you look at a tree and just being like, how is this tree any more treeier than another tree? It's not, but something in its imperfection, in the fact that it is, it's beautiful. and it's connected to the perfect. It's connected to the form of the true oak tree or something like that. But it's not the perfect oak tree. But somehow in the being, it's beautiful, and it is perfect for where it is, because it's just like an aspect of the perfect. Because again, the perfect can never be captured here in the material. It doesn't work that way. If you bring that lens to your walk around, to looking at objects, and then learn to bring that lens to people and to conversations, I think you will find that a very rich lens and kind of perspective shift that might open a few doors for you and might help, I hope. With that, I'm going to say thank you for your time and attention, and I will see you in the next one. Bye, guys.